Thank you for joining us on Silently Bleeding Hope for the Pastor's Wife. Today, our special guest is Dr. Deanna Shrodes. Deanna is the Penn, Florida Women's Ministry Director, and she is an amazing, powerful woman of God. One of the things I love most about Deanna is you never have to wonder what she's thinking. She's going to lovingly and honestly speak the truth. Deanna has written several books, and she just came out with a brand new book.
Thank you, Jan. My book is called Uncommon Answers, Partnering with the Holy Spirit to Believe for Extraordinarily More. And it is about how we can not only pray, not only verbally just pray and ask the Lord for things, but also how to partner with Him in other ways, like listening as much as we talk, and waiting on Him well, and sacrificing and surrendering our all to Him, and being tenacious, and just lots of other things that are really important to get big answers to prayer. And I'm sharing many of my experiences throughout the years in receiving miracles, including the biggest one I've ever received, which was 2 years ago in finding my biological father, and then many other miracles in my life and other people's lives. I have verified miracles of many other people that are just going to bless people and increase their faith.
Thank you. And Deanna, your mother, I believe, took your dad's name to the grave, right?
She did.
So, I mean, your story is a miracle of miracles.
Yes.
God brought your biological father into your life. So, ladies,
Yes.
you're going to want to get the book. I'll leave a link on Amazon down below so you can just hit that. And I'll also leave Deanna's website on there. So, you're going to want to check out her other books as well. Struggle has been one of my favorites, and Juggle.
Struggle. Struggle. Yeah, we don't want them to struggle. We don't want them to struggle.
I'm sorry,
Juggle. How to
Juggle.
juggle.
Yes, that's been one of my favorites of all her. I've read all of her books so far, and I will be reading her new book. And I'm so excited that God has opened this door. And wow, you've got
Yes.
some amazing people who have, I forget what you call it, but they've written,
Endorsed.
they've
Yes.
endorsed your book. That's pretty amazing.
Yes. Mark Batterson has endorsed it, and a lot of our executives in the Assemblies of God, like our superintendent, Doug Clay, our secretary, Pastor Donna Barrett, and then others like Alton Garrison, Rod Loy, different people have endorsed it, that I'm just really, really grateful that they've come on board to endorse it.
Only God, right?
Only God, only God.
I want to tell you all up front, you want to stay to the end because Deanna's going to share a funny story about when she was a young pastor's wife, and you're going to want to hear that. All right. Well, I'm excited to interview Deanna. Let's just jump right in. So, Deanna, share a little bit about your journey as a pastor's wife.
Well, I'm thinking that, like most, I would guess, like most women who are pastors' wives, the journey has been very up and down, a roller coaster ride of learning. And I only wish I knew then what I know now. I mean, I'm sure we all feel that way if we've been in this for very long. But I used to focus a lot more in the beginning on what people needed, what the church needed, what people were looking to me to do or to be. And it took a long time to realize that I wasn't the church's wife, I was the pastor's wife. And there's a big difference in being there to meet the needs of the church or the people and being there to meet the needs of the pastor. And by that, I mean, too, it can get confusing because I don't mean like what Larry needs me to be in the church. I mean, like, what do you need from me as your wife, whether we were in the ministry or not? You know, what do you need from me spiritually, emotionally, physically? What do you need from me to be the wife that you need me to be? And of course, it's reciprocal. It's what do I need from him as my husband? But it took a while for me to see the difference between the two. That I was, when you're called to be the pastor's wife, you're called to be the wife to the pastor, not the wife to the church. And it took a long time for me to realize that and to not get caught up in so many unrealistic expectations. There's just no way you can meet the expectations of everyone out there. And I learned real quick that if you don't know who you are, they'll be glad to tell you who they want you to be. They'll be really glad to tell you exactly what they expect you to be. And with every church member, it's different.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to please people, when I was trying to please people, I'm just all over the place. and just floundering so many times, or frustrated, or depressed, or just feeling like I could never measure up. And truthfully, I couldn't. I couldn't measure up to what all the people wanted me to be. So it needed to be, what does God want me to be? And what does my husband need me to be? That's the key. So that was really a hard thing to learn in my journey. And if I'm honest, I'm still learning that. I'm still setting those boundaries we all need to set that, for so many of us, we don't set them in the beginning. We're afraid to set them. We're afraid of what the repercussions might be. I'm still on that journey. I'm definitely not a place where, I've arrived.
I understand. I'm there with you. I'm still learning. And sometimes I find myself saying yes when I should say no.
Absolutely.
But
Me too.
I've learned to say no a lot more, and I'm grateful for that, but I still catch myself doing that. So, Deanna, you've shared with me before, and you've shared openly on a platform that you've struggled with trauma in your life. And the truth is, if you've been around very long, most people have suffered trauma. What was that like for you? And what are you willing to share about that, how it affected you personally, emotionally, and spiritually?
Was kind of different and unique and difficult because what I faced isn't always realized or affirmed or validated by the church at large. I had gone to counseling, and my therapist told me that I had been suffering for a very long time, but I didn't realize it. I went in thinking I'm talking about a death in the family, and she ends up extending the session, twice as long as it was scheduled to be, and said, you've been suffering a long, long time from complex trauma, complicated grief, and so on and so on. I mean, there were just a list of things. And I didn't realize that a lot of this stemmed from being an adoptee, from being adopted when I was young, from having my family that I was adopted into be dysfunctional and break apart. So both families I was ever a part of have crumbled in dysfunction. And I took all that into the ministry. I didn't realize, I was determined my home was going to be different. I was determined my marriage was going to be different, and it was different, but it was greatly impacted. And the way I led in the church and in ministry in general was greatly impacted by all that trauma that I thought I had addressed, but really I hadn't addressed any of it. And so many times with people that are in my shoes that have these experiences of losing your original family, being adopted, and so on and so forth. We don't even realize the impact of that sometimes until we're 30, 40, 50 years old. And then it's like, oh my gosh, there's things that I didn't even realize that this is a part of why I do what I do,
Mhm.
how I react the way I react. I didn't even realize these were traumas that I needed to address. And once I did address them, everything changed.
That's powerful. I think somebody listening today needed to hear just that, I love that you're so open about going to counseling and therapy. You've helped me with that. I have talked with a therapist for a couple of years, and it has helped tremendously for the trauma that I've walked through. So thank you for being so open.
I'm so glad.
How did trauma affect your faith?
I can't really say, honestly, and I know I'm different in this way. I can't say that it shook my faith or like my salvation or believing in God. That was the one thing that I always had from the time I was really, really young. I had a relationship with Jesus, and my grandmother and my adopted family was the biggest influence on my life and really invested in me. And I knew God was real. And he spoke to me from the time I was just a child. And there have been many people throughout the years, even, for instance, I became very active in the adoptee community, and many people there don't know Jesus. And when I would share with them, they would say, how come you still believe in God? How come you believe any of this? And it was a very easy answer for me. I said, I believe in God because he's the one person who's never left me.
Yeah.
I believe in God because he's my foundation. He's never let me down. And so my faith, honestly, was pretty easy to hold on to. Um, that really wasn't a factor. However, even though my faith wasn't shaken, I had various patterns and habits because of my hurts and reactions that I didn't even realize where this was stemming from, how I would act towards people. I was a different leader years ago than I am now. People who have pastored 20, 30 years ago, they don't even know this person now. I mean, like, I still keep in touch with many of them and they see the difference. But there's just a huge difference since I've been healed, you know, but I always did hold on to my faith.
Oh, that's good. So, what was some of the most difficult things you faced during the long season of trauma?
I know it sounds funny because I have a bad cold. What I faced that I didn't even realize I was facing, I was just blinded to it.
Mm.
Jan, I would react in different ways to people that I didn't even realize I was doing. Like, for instance, um, I lost my original family, and then my other family broke up, and my dad left, and it was just so painful. And I thought I had dealt with all that, but not to the degree that I needed to. And so in the church, particularly when people would leave, when they would leave for any reason, they could leave for a good reason, like they're getting a promotion, they're moving across the country, something good is happening, or they could leave for a negative reason, like they've taken up an offense, they're talking about Larry and I, they're bashing us behind our backs, they're betraying us. Either way, I would not react well. If they left for a good reason, like a promotion, and especially if they were close to me,
Mhm.
I would avoid the goodbye at all costs. I would avoid being around them because it hurts so bad. I would find another place to be when it came time to like hug and say goodbye. People would even follow up with me later and say, Pastor Deanna, I love you so much. And I looked for you everywhere in the church and I tried to find you and you just weren't anywhere to be found. And I didn't get the chance to say goodbye before we moved to North Carolina or California or wherever. And I would just say something like, I'm so sorry I got caught up in something. Frankly, I would lie about it and just not come clean with, I just couldn't manage the goodbye. Then if it was bad, if they were talking about us, I would handle that very poorly, very immaturely. I'm being honest that I would talk about that person. I would sometimes even call them things like a Jezebel spirit. I would say, I don't even know if they're a believer. Now, to be clear, I know that some people in our churches do behave this way. There are people that may, I mean, who knows? They may even be possessed. I mean, it could be terrible. I mean, there's people that do terrible things, and I'm not negating that people do terrible things, but I would very quickly label people, very quickly, you know, label them in negative ways and talk about them. And I would not bless them on the way out. When I saw pastors bless people on the way out, I would think, oh my God, I could never do that. I would just handle it so badly. And I'm really sorry for that now. I've apologized. Once I was healed, I went back and apologized to people that I could remember. And when I come across people and I remember, oh, gee, this happened with them, I try to just take time to tell them, hey, I was a different person back then when I was leading you, and I'm so sorry. And now since I have been through counseling for that, I try really hard to handle it in a godly and mature way, always bless people, always not allow their leaving to affect our relationship. In fact, I go the extra mile to tell people that, like our team members, I'll say, you saying yes or no is not going to affect the way I feel about you. And mean it. You leaving is not going to affect the way I feel about you. And I always stay for the goodbye. I always bless them on the way out. I always welcome them back. I can't say that I could always do that. I was really a terrible leader in the beginning of our ministry for a very long time.
Thank you for your vulnerability and your honesty, Deanna. I know that's going to help a lot of pastors' wives. How did you balance ministry responsibilities while walking through your own pain?
That was really hard. When I came to the point where I started therapy for this, I had just lost my birth mom, and it was a breaking point for me where I just knew I wasn't okay. That was when I lost her, she died, and she had told me just weeks and months prior that she was never going to tell me who my father was. I was so devastated that I told Larry, I knew I wasn't healed yet. And I didn't even know what was wrong with me at that point. And I said to him, I don't think I can, I forget exactly how I put it, Jan, but it was something like, I don't know that I can have good behavior right now. Like, I can't go to church right now. And this was very new for me. I mean, Jan, I'm one of these people, like a lot of us are, that never misses church. And even on vacation, we go to church. And I never miss more than 2 weeks of church for vacation. I just knew I am going to lash out right now. I am mad. I am angry. I am all the things. I am devastated. And so I asked him if he would be okay with me to go away for a little bit longer of a time. Not, I want to be clear, not to leave him and not to leave our family. It wasn't like I was leaving my family. It was going away to get quiet, to get my head on straight, to figure out where to from here. And I was going to counseling at that time. I was already going to counseling, and my counselor supported this. She said, "Yes, go away, get alone with God, um, deal with this." And so I went away, and I was gone for 40 days. I had never done that before. Never, ever, ever in our ministry had I ever taken 40 days off and by myself. And it was just me and the Lord for 40 days. I really did nothing but get up. I walked a couple miles in the morning. I would eat something, and then I would just read God's word, pray, just spend quiet time. Same thing, a little later on the day, I'd, eat something, walk a couple miles, and then go to bed. And that's what I did for 40 days, aside from I always went to Sunday morning church at a church where I wasn't anybody or anything. I would just go sit on the pew and just receive and just take it in. And I was so blessed that the church I chose to go to was doing a series on rebuilding the ruins of your life. And they had all these bricks and mortar on the stage of like Nehemiah, and like it was like half of a wall that was up there. And the pastor was talking about how to rebuild your life when it's been in devastation. It was a perfect series for me. And it was a big church, and I didn't have to talk about what I was going through. I could just go sit there and cry if I wanted to. I could just worship openly without anybody asking me for anything like they do as a pastor's wife. Nobody came up and asked me for anything. I just was able to worship, cry, pray, take in the sermon. Then I came home 40 days later and kept going to therapy, kept moving forward. And eventually, 8 months later, I was at a very healed place. But that's how I handled it. And I came back to church after 40 days, came back to serving after 40 days, came back to doing all the things after 40 days. But, I was becoming a different person for the
Wow.
better.
Yeah, yeah. I can only imagine how helpful that was as a woman of God, as a wife, as a mother, and as a pastor's wife. And not everybody can do that, but I'm grateful the Lord allowed you and your husband supported you in doing this. That's so
Me
important.
too, because he had a hard time being away from me. My husband is a massive extrovert. We're opposites, and most people don't realize it, but I am an introvert, and he's an extrovert, and he has to be with people. And I mean, he doesn't ever want to eat alone or go to bed alone or anything like that. And so I know it was so hard for him, and I hate that, but it was necessary for the for my mental health at the time.
Well, that speaks well of his love for you because that was very
Mhm.
superficial. But
It really was. You're right.
so, what do you do now, Deanna, to protect your emotional and mental health?
Mhm. I still go to therapy now. I really recommend it to people. I really believe that, I mean, I'm not saying this is a legalistic thing, like if you're not going, there's something terrible wrong with you. I just think, especially if you can do it, if you can afford it, even once a month, you know, I don't go every week now. I go every other week. And there's times I've even taken it down to once a month. Um, I just think it's good to keep a pulse on our mental health, So, and even before this, depression runs very strong in my family. Um, I want to keep a pulse on that. I don't want to let anything get out of control. So I really try to address that. I try to not try, I do keep up with my regular doctor's appointments and addressing anything like that. Like when I've needed to be on medication, which I am on a low dose of that now, and I'm not ashamed of that or upset about it. I mean, um, I see people in my family that aren't on it, and quite frankly, I see that they probably should be for the good of themselves and others. This helps keep me balanced. It helps to keep me my brain in a right place to be able to live well and lead well. And I'm not embarrassed of that any more than I would be to take if I was diabetic or if I had something wrong with my heart or any of that. It's just no different to me. I try to do things like walking, getting out in fresh air really is huge. I try to get out in fresh air, daily is best, but at least 3 to 5 times a week to get out and to do that. And I feel like a new person. I really do. I feel like I have a new lease on life when I walk back in the house after doing that. I always try to get enough sleep. I know I don't sound like it right now, especially because I have this cold and I just feel weird. But I try to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep minimum a night, because that really affects us. Not only, even if we don't have any depression or anything, lack of sleep really affects the way we live, the way we lead. But especially if you do struggle, you need a good amount of sleep. And so 7 to 8 hours of sleep, taking my day off, taking a Sabbath day where it's just those restorative activities, things that give me life and energy. I learned in the past couple years, it's been like the past 7 years, I've learned what a Sabbath really is. It's definitely not what many of us pastors' wives would think it is, and what I thought it was growing up, which was just being faithful to go to church on Sunday. That's what I grew up thinking it was. And it's not, it's getting rest that we need. And it's not just laying down and sleeping. It's anything that brings you rest and renewal and peace and the things that just give you life, like riding my bike. And I don't want anybody to think that like I'm this athletic, I'm not doing any triathlons. This is like me on a cruiser bike, yeah, like with a cruiser bike with a basket, just kind of cruising through my neighborhood or some trails, and that brings me rest. Going to lunch or dinner with my husband, just hanging out with him, watching a movie at home, or reading. Um, all of that brings me a lot of rest and peace, and I try to do those things on a weekly basis.
So good. So good. Somebody needed to hear that too. So, Deanna, with all that you've been through, how has this changed the way you minister to others, especially pastors' wives?
Mhm. Jan, I don't say this with any judgment. No judgment. I want to be so clear about that. No judgment. I was once that person.
Mhm.
I really thought when I went to the district office, okay, I'm going to now be leading leaders, and it's going to be so different than people in the church. And I was really surprised. It's surprising how some people will act even when they're in the ministry, and I shouldn't be, because I acted that way at times before I was healed. I lashed out at times before I was healed. And I'll see a pastor's wife, she might lash out about something dumb like a registration. She doesn't like a registration price, or she doesn't like that we're in the late registration phase of an event, or she doesn't like how we do seating or whatever. And she might call and or see me somewhere like district council and just go off about it. And I used to think, I don't know. I just used to think that was their personality or something. But at this point, whenever I see that in my mind, the first thing that pops into my mind is, what would the healed version of her look like?
Mhm.
Because I realize this is not about a registration. This is not about seating. This is not about any of this little stuff. Something is going on with her that, like, was going on with me that I didn't realize. And I don't look at her with judgment. I don't look at her with eyes of disdain. I look at her with eyes of compassion. And I'm thinking to myself, I wish that this person could see what's happening in their life and that there's things that need to be healed. And maybe this is why they have an angry edge, or this is why they take offense very easily. This is why they lash out about something. We have people in our churches, they might lash out about something like somebody not showing up for the nursery and they just blow up, you know? And so often it's not really about the nursery, it's something deeper. It's something, as pastors, we see that we're often punching bags for people. They're upset that their kid is on drugs or their marriage is terrible or whatever, when they take it out on us because they see us as safe people. And I think it's the same thing with pastors' wives. Many times they're hurting. They just don't realize that they've got that edge to them, that Jesus needs to heal something deep inside them. So I try to look at people I try to remind myself all the time, see them with compassion, no matter how they're coming off to you, see them with compassion, and just try to be a safe place that when and if they're ready. I mean, I'm certainly not going to walk up to anybody, and it's very offensive if I would walk up and say, hey, I think you need some therapy. I'm certainly not going to do that. But to be a safe place that if they ever maybe want to ask me something about it, or if they would ask me to pray for them, I'm certainly not going to pray some kind of prayer that would be seen either as offensive, but just to pray a prayer of healing and peace over them, and that God would heal any of the broken places in them and help them to live and lead from a healthier place.
That's good. So, Deanna, that pastor's wife that's watching right now, and she's hurting so deeply, would you speak into her life?
Yes. I would say to you, if I could do anything again, if I could do anything over again, I only wish I had gone for help sooner. That is my only regret in this. I mean, of course, I regret the way I treated people sometimes. I do. But more than that, I regret not getting help sooner. And I would say things many times in the earlier years because we made a lot less money, of course, in the ministry. And I'm not saying it's always this way, but most of us, we start out making a lot less money in the early years. And I would just say, well, we can't afford that. And I would think that the kids needed this or that more, or we needed this or that more for our household. And I didn't realize I wasn't only affecting the church, I was affecting my household. And I wish that I would have just said, it doesn't matter what this takes and what I have to sacrifice to make this happen. I also would say to her, there's got to be things you don't know about of ways of receiving help, counselors that will work on a sliding scale, therapists, places that will make deals with you to be able to, if they know your income, there's places to reach out if you're serious about getting help. And I just wish I would have pursued that more. That was my biggest mistake. I just beg anybody listening to this, don't wait a minute longer. Don't make the excuses. As moms, and I understand that we love our kids so much, and we'll have this mindset of my kids need to go to camp and my kids need to go to this, and they need to, we want to send them to all the things, all the spiritual activities, and certainly that is critical. But so many times as moms, we put ourselves on the back burner, and we take care of everyone else's needs before our own. And I would just say it's so important for you to take care of yourself because nobody's standing in line to do it.
Thank you. Thank you. Deanna, I just want to add to that. When I lost my parents 5 days apart, and 6 months later, my niece and my sister-in-law were tragically killed, and then some other things that I was walking through with our family that was very difficult. And I said to my husband, baby, who do I talk to? We can't afford a therapist. And he took my hands and he said, let's pray right now, because our insurance wouldn't touch it. We prayed, and it was like, I wish I would have written it down. It was 2 or 3 weeks later, we got a letter in the mail from Blue Cross Blue Shield saying we now pay for therapy.
Wow. Oh my gosh, look at God.
So I was just like, Thank you, Lord. And I prayed
Yes.
and I said, I looked at all the lists because you have to go with who they have. And I said, God, you show me who you want me to talk with because I don't want to go through so many different people and trying to find the fit. And the Lord just led me to the right lady. And it was just, it's been so incredibly helpful. Again, I want to thank you for being so real, so open about what you've walked through, in front of all the women in Florida and around the world. I mean, your message has gone everywhere and God is using you. And I'm so grateful for your honesty, your vulnerability. So I am one of those people that God's used you to change. And I thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That blesses my heart a lot.
Amen.
Mhm.
So now, before we get off, I want to hear about when you were a young pastor's wife, that story that your husband just shared this weekend at the Stronger Conference.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, I'll share just a little bit more about it to give it some more context. It's everything he said was true. Um, but this woman that was coming on to him, she had done it to every previous pastor, every single pastor, and she just had a thing for, I guess, men of what she saw as like a man of who had power or something. I don't know. I think that must have been her thing. And every pastor prior had to ask her to leave the church. But when a new pastor would come, she'd come right back. And it was like a cycle. And we were warned by the board, by other people in the church. They would say, she just does this. And she was very brazen. I mean, so brazen. I don't think any pastor's wife had, confronted her before. It was mainly the pastor or a couple board members would ask her to stop. But she would do, I mean, outlandish things. The pastor before us, she would call late at night and she would say, I'm in need of prayer. I'm in need of a pastoral visit. Will you come? And the pastor would say, oh, yes, Susan and I will get over, get in the car and come. I don't want Susan. I just need you to come. And she would be so brazen as to tell the pastor, I don't want your wife. I just want you to minister to me. And she would just do crazy stuff. Like she would call the church office. She would ask if I was in first. She would say, is Pastor Deanna in today? And if the secretary said no, that was her clue to get in her car, come over to the church and see my husband because she knew I wasn't there. And she would do that to previous pastors too. She would drop by my home if she saw I wasn't there, hoping she was going to catch him by himself. And of course, he would never let her in or anything like that. But it was just, this is the stuff she would do. And it was getting to an outlandish point. And so one Sunday morning, this just went on and on. And sadly, it was so outlandish. Some people in the church just would laugh and think it was hilarious. Like, she's so outlandish. They would just kind of giggle. I'm like, this is not funny. It's driving me crazy. Like, she's following my husband around. She's just so brazen. And so finally, one Sunday, I was teaching the adult Sunday school class in the sanctuary, and my husband was in his office studying. And but he must have came out to the water fountain or somewhere to get a drink or something. And he came out and he was walking back into his office, and she came up behind him. And when he went into the office, she slid in behind him, slammed the door, and turned out the lights. And he very quickly turned on the lights, opened the door, yelled, like, someone come in here. So like, someone rescue me from this. And then word got to me, like in the sanctuary, like that this was going on. So I had just had it. I had just had it, had it, had it. And like he said, we were super young. He was 25, I was 26 and immature. Okay. But we were lead pastors and just had it. I was over it. I was like, I'm dealing with this now. I'm tired of it. Everybody's just snickering, thinks this is funny. This is not funny. It needs to be dealt with. I'm tired of it. And so she was sitting in the sanctuary. Church was getting ready to start. Like, the music's playing, the people are filing into their places, and they're sitting there waiting for the service to start. And she was sitting by herself, towards the middle. And I came up and I just said, hey, I want to talk to you. I just said, if you need any ministry here at the church, I said, feel free to talk to myself or any other ladies. I said, but if you approach my husband again, I am going to break both your legs. And then I just looked at her and said, enjoy the rest of the service. And then I walked out and went to my husband's office and I said, she's not going to be a problem again. I mean, and of course, she looked horrified. Nobody had ever talked to her in that manner. Nobody had ever. And I went back to my husband's office and I said, babe, she's not going to be a problem anymore. I took care of it. And he says, what are you talking about? You took care of it. I told him what I did. And he jumped up from his desk. He started pacing back and forth. He was sweating. He was upset. He said, Deanna, we cannot continue to pastor if you're going to do something like, and I had never done anything like that before. I want to be clear, this wasn't my pattern, but he was just so horrified. He said, we cannot continue to pastor a church if you're going to behave like this. Like pastors' wives don't tell somebody that they're going to hurt them and cause them bodily harm. Like you need to apologize. You need to stop this. And I was just like, no, I'm not dealing with this. I've just had it. I'm tired of it. I want to cut it off. And of course, we had a little back and forth about whether it was appropriate or not. But I will say, she didn't do it again. She never did it again. I mean, she was done. Like it was taken care of. So I don't really know. I mean, I always say I was immature, and that was a lot crazy to do. But I don't really know like how she would have been successfully handled because she was just off the wall.
Yeah. So she stayed in the church?
She did. And she stayed. She hadn't stayed under any other pastor, but she stayed with us, she stayed. It just I can't say that she like got right with God or that she was happy or anything like that, but she remained and she didn't come at Larry again. I mean, it was just, so I don't know, Jan. I don't know what I would do given the chance to do it again. I don't even know. I just know it was frustrating at the time.
Oh, I can imagine. I'm sure there's other pastors' wives watching that can relate because women love men in power,
They
especially
do.
if they're hurting and they don't have someone that adores
Right.
them. It's extra hard. Deanna, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a great honor and a pleasure to have you with us.
My pleasure. Thank you again.
Sweet woman of God, I trust this interview has encouraged you today. And if you have questions or you need prayer, I'm going to leave our email address right down below. Feel free to email and we will pray for you, and I will get back with you as quickly as possible. Know that God loves you, He sees you, and He hears you. And we'll look forward to our next interview. God bless. Bye.
Thank you for watching Silently Bleeding, Finding Hope for the Pastor's Wife. I look forward to connecting with you. Feel free to leave me comments down below and make sure and subscribe. If you want to know every time a new video is coming out, hit the bell. I would be so delighted if you would also hit the like button, and feel free to share this video with anyone you know that this would encourage. Blessings, my friends.